So now that we've talked about slope from a graph, a slope from 2 points, or an equation, let's talk about how those might look if you have zero slope and undefined slope. A linear function has a slope of 0 if there is no change in y. Remember that we find slope by change in y over change in x. So if there's no change in y, meaning it's not going up, not going down, that these two values are staying the same in your points, there's no change, then the slope is 0, because the numerator on the slope equation would be 0, and 0 divided by any number is still 0. If I have no money, I can share my $0 with the whole world, and everybody still has 0. So the y-coordinate does not increase or decrease in the graph. There is no change in y. The slope is 0. That's what we were talking about last week when we were talking about horizontal graphs. So if you see something that's horizontal, straight line left to right, there's no change in y. It's not moving up or down. If you see 2 points that have the same exact y value, if you plugged those into the slope formula, you would end up with 0 over whatever number here, and that would be 0. The slope would be 0. In an equation, you might see y equals 12. There is no change in y. Y is always 12. So the rate of change is 0. In slope-intercept form, you would see this because there's no x in this problem, because 0 times x is 0. What about an undefined slope? A linear equation or graph has an undefined slope if, well, what we said earlier was there's no change in y for a 0 slope, so for this one, if there is no change in x. And what we're talking about here in this problem is because with the slope formula being change in y over change in x, if x stays the same, then my denominator ends up being 0. And if you probably asked Alexa or Siri or Google Home, can you divide something by 0? No, that means it's undefined. In a graph, that's where we would see our vertical equations straight up and down. The x-coordinate does not move left or right. There's no change in x. The slope would then be undefined. Okay, in an equation, that's where we have those x equals a number. There is no change in x. X is always -7 in this example. The rate of change is undefined because it cannot be written in slope-intercept form. Alright, so that's a way you can see 0 slope and undefined slope in graphs, 2 points, and equations.